can build connectivity from to all the remote sites, which is a very big deal. Right, so that's about what I had. Thank you very much. So let's talk. Let's see if we have any questions.
I have already shared the questions with you. Request you to take the questions.
Okay. Sure. Is RT and RD are contained in the MPLS header? So this is a question by Gaurav Deep Singh. Well, as I said, a BGP update is going to contain the IPv4 address attached with an RD. So that is the complete VPN IPv4 information that is being exchanged. RD is part of the actual IP address itself that is being exchanged, whereas RT is carried as a extended community attribute. So it is like a color, as I said. It's like a coloring of the route. So although both RT and RD uniquely identify a VPN, yes, they are contained. They are not in the MPLS header as such. They are in the BGP update. Okay. Can customer have control over the MPLS VPN? So this is a question by Raghunath M. The answer is no, because that is not what the customer is looking for. He wants to transfer the burden of having to monitor all these things to the service provider. He doesn't even know anything about the VPN as such. The VPN concept is very much within the context of the service provider. It is a design by the service provider to optimize his network and provide services. So the answer is no. VPN is really within the service provider context and not with reference to the customer. Customer can only ask for a type of service which the service provider can cater to. So if there are N subscribers and all like to have different cost policies, he has to request service provider. My question is, how long will it take for the service provider to provide the required costs to the customer? The way I see it is, you are asking the customer for providing these kind of services. All the service provider has to do is know which are the edge routers which are going to have sites belonging to the same VPN, and do the right configuration in terms of what is the VPN, what is the route target, what is the route distinction, things like that. So it is a very simple deal in my opinion. It should hardly take a few minutes for him to configure the whole thing, because if you see a typical service provider network, he's going to have one network management station which will have access to all the routers. So it's a matter of downloading just the VPN configuration to all the edge routers which service the same VPN. So time is really not a concern here. Okay. So the next question is from Harris Padin. Sorry if I got the name wrong. But which IGP is better for MPLS, OSPF or ISIS? So typically what I have seen is that most customers go with OSPF. The only reason being that it is more popular than ISIS. If you see ISIS, it is not based on the TCP/IP protocol suite. It's open standards, right? So only those service providers which are already used to ISIS will continue to use it. Not so. I would say I would not say one protocol is better than the other. I would say OSPF is deployed more than ISIS. because both the protocols allow you to share traffic engineered information. Okay, the next question is from Anup Ramteke. As of some telecom operators are taking on the MPLS project, how does it really be implemented on the existing BTS sites, and thus in this case they will use LDP application for giving the services. So as we talked about the difference between RSVP and LDP, right? If you want the best effort services to be provided, you would go with LDP within your network. Otherwise, you would use RSVP. Basically, here the thing to keep in mind is the kind of expertise the service provider needs to have from their workforce to configure these kind of services. Okay, the next question is from Ashok S. What are MPLS tags? Will it be unique with reference to a service provider? I'm assuming you're really talking about labels. Yes, it will be unique within the service provider domain, because that is the way an LSP is going to be built. That is going to uniquely identify a VPN and all that. So it is going to be unique within the service provider for sure. Then the next question is from Faizuddin Pasha. Does MPLS packet movement differ for IPv6 scenario? No. IPv4 and IPv6 are just different transport mechanisms. It really should not matter. We talked about why BGP is the protocol of choice for this particular deployment. And in this case, I would say really the power of BGP can be seen, wherein instead of an IPv4, you can use IPv6, and the entire BGP protocol can work on this particular information without having to make any changes. So that is really that leveraging the advantages of the BGP routing protocol. Okay, the next question is from Leonard David. What type of speed is matter in MPLS VP network for different site connectivity? So the answer to this question is it depends. It depends on the kind of VPN customer. As you can see, this is more dependent on the number of sites that the customer wants connectivity for, and what kind of volume of traffic is involved in transfer and things. If you're talking of, let's say, broadcasting, or a lot of video traffic, then the bandwidth requirements are different. Then your latency requirements are different. So depending on the type of traffic and depending upon the number of sites for which you want connectivity, the VPN customers would buy that kind of service from the service provider. Now, as I said, if latency is a concern for him, he would pay more and ask for more QoS services from the service provider. That's really how it's going to work. It all depends on each individual VPN customer. Okay, so the next question is from Paresh Goswami. How can we monitor the in and out traffic in a MPLS VPN in a point-to-point model? Okay. I'm going to assume that this is from the service provider perspective. So basically, the service provider is going to be a little concerned about the kind of services he's going to give to the customer. Let's say he wants to control the number of routes that a VPN customer can exchange with the service provider. He can put a limit saying you're allowed to exchange only 100 routes with me. That means they can have connectivity only up to 100 routes, right? Next thing is he can build monitoring capabilities on each of the interfaces that go to the customer side. There are many network monitoring technologies that are out there, and the service provider is always monitoring that, because it is possible that one VPN customer can send so much traffic that it can choke the entire network. So there are different kinds of monitoring technologies which the service provider is always monitoring to control the amount of traffic, and it is also tied to the billing, right? He's going to bill the customer based on this services. Okay. Whether this technology is applicable for both versions of IPs, IPv4 and v6. This is a question by Govardhan SR. Very much so. This technology is independent of IPv4 or v6. In fact, both can be used. A VPN service is just a service wherein the customer wants connectivity from one remote site to the other, irrespective of whether it's IPv4 and v6. So yes, both can be used. Ramakrishna Rao has this question: which routing protocol should be selected between CE and PE? I mean, based on what factors? Yeah, this is a good question. So the way I have seen customers choose this is that if the customer is familiar with OSPF running in his network, he would want to continue with it. The service provider is not going to put any restrictions on the kind of routing protocols that the customer will want to use. If the customer says, I want to run RIP, fine, the service provider will say, fine, you can run it over this particular link. If he wants OSPF, he can choose that. So it is more what the customer is comfortable with. That is one aspect. The second aspect is it also depends on the type of network that the customer is part of. If he has a huge network, he would go for a much bigger protocol. He would go for, let's say, BGP, because the routing protocol itself has characteristics to deal with a huge number of routes. So I would say it depends on what the customer is comfortable with and what type of network the customer is part of, whether it's a big network or small network. It depends on that. For all you know, a simple static route could also be sufficient. If a service provider is not having congestion in the core network, is there any advantage of putting QoS except for putting policy in the customer edge? So this is a question by Harris Padin Harathil. Sorry for the name wrong. So if the service provider is not having congestion, then is there any advantage of putting QoS? Definitely, there is a lot of advantage of putting QoS. Let us not forget, the service provider is charging the customer based on the type of QoS is configuring. So there is money involved in the kind of QoS. So QoS is not for reducing congestion or anything. It is for billing the customer. So these two are two separate problems. So yes, it does matter on what type of QoS he's going to associate with the traffic from the customer. Okay, I guess that is the last of the questions. Are there any more questions?
One or two more questions.
I see another question came. So this is a question from Dhanesh Sethi. When would the customer use a static route from CE to PE, and when would they use dynamic routing between PE and CE? On what basis this has to be decided? So this is a good question. So this is kind of related to what I answered earlier. Now, it all depends on the size of the customer network. So the customer is really, it's basically a network, right? So it's a head office. So there is a network within the head office. Now, if it's a very huge office and there's a lot of information, lot of departments within that office, and he wants to share all that information with a remote office, then yes, he would want to go for a dynamic routing protocol wherein he is exchanging all that information from head office to the branch office. Otherwise, if it's a very small company where he has only say some 10-15 routes that you want to exchange with the branch office, then he would go for a static route. Basically, it is the IPVPN or not. It is basically a routing problem, which is if you have small number of routes, you can do with static routes. If you have huge number of routes, you really want to go for a dynamic routing protocol. And the reason why you want to go for a dynamic routing protocol is because it can react to changes and things like that. If some link goes down, you want it to choose a different path. So those are your concerns. So it's a routing problem than an IPVPN related problem. Okay. I have another question from Raghunath M. If the customer is connecting to PE using EIGRP and is using Juniper router which doesn't support EIGRP, what will happen? Basically, we are talking of two people who do not understand each other's language. Basically, the routing adjacency will not be established, and this is something that won't happen because the customer will call up the service provider and say, I'm running this protocol, I want connectivity to your network. So the service provider is going to configure the same routing protocol that the customer is using. He is not going to configure a different routing protocol. Otherwise, he cannot charge the customer for the service that he can provide and make money. So this is a situation which is not going to happen because everybody wants to make money here. And I have another comment from Raghunath M. Thanks for the best seminar on MPLS IPVPN. Thank you very much for being patient with my talk. Really appreciate that comment. I'm hoping that the seminar was helpful for people to understand the concepts behind IPVPN and how basically people can make the customer is beneficial for the customers as well as for the service providers. I got more comments from a few other people. Anup Ramtekit says thanks a lot. Ashok says thank you so much. It was very informative. Really appreciate the share some information or clarify some of the doubts that you had about IPVPN. Thank you very much. All right, I guess that's the end of the session.
Yes,
thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, now
that will be the end of the webinar.
Thanks, Raghu, for such an informative session. Thanks to the lovely audience for making this webinar a huge success. Recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. We are also delighted to announce the next webinar series on social media. The first session in the series is happening tomorrow at 5 p.m. Topic for the webinar would be social media metrics, what, when and how much to measure. Hope to see you all tomorrow at 5 p.m. Thank you.